Okay, so here's the deal. Just for Laughs is canceling its festivals in Montreal and in Toronto this year, and the company's in financial trouble. You should know that JFL has played a huge role in Canada's comedy community. So the question is, what happens next? Today on the podcast, the future of comedy in Canada. I'm Elamin Abdul-Mahmoud. This is Commotion. Look, Just for Laughs changed comedy in this country. So it was pretty shocking when we learned that both Montreal and Toronto were canceling their festivals this year. We still don't know what that means in the long term. And maybe the only thing that is certain right now for everyone involved is that there's clearly time for a reset. Cassie Cao and Ali Hassan both got their starts at Just for Laughs. They're with me now. We're going to talk about the future of stand-up comedy in Canada. Ali, Cassie, welcome to the show, pals. How's it going?
Hello, Elamin.
Look, I like both of you. I like laughing with both of you, but this is a grim maybe conversation. It's a serious conversation. So feel free to throw in some bits while we're doing this because there's nothing to laugh about. Maybe I'll start with you. It's been a week since we learned that the group that runs Just for Laughs canceled this year's festivals in Montreal and Toronto. You grew up in Montreal. You also got your start in comedy in that city. How important was JFL to you?
JFL, first of all, as a Montrealer, it was just cool to have it. As we had the Jazz Fest, we had the Comedy Fest, which ran almost a month between the French and English sides. It wasn't all cool. I mean, sometimes you had to run away from somebody who was trying to prank you on Just for Laughs gags. But in general, it was a very cool thing to have. And then when I got into comedy, it was this incredible goal, and it was right there. It was my own city, and and it wound up being, and not just for me, but I think for many performers, it was like that hot girl in high school, and you were like, if she just got to know me, I know she would like me for who I am. There was a bit of that happening. You would pine for Just for Laughs love, and then when you got the love, you were like, no, she's just like all the other girls I knew. She wasn't all that, but still, it was very cool, and it was an awesome festival, and it was an awesome time. As far as my experiences and my memories and the parties and the people that I met, it's akin to if you have the X in your city, or Ottawa has the Blues Fest, or if you're in a city that has some massive defining event every year, it's a loss from that perspective. Just this wonderful thing in your city that attracted great talent.
First of all, I just want to say I've never met someone from Montreal who didn't take a moment to brag about Montreal. This is sort of the legal requirement of being from Montreal. Ali Hassan is shrugging, be like, "Hey, that's
contractually obliged." Contractually obliged.
Totally understand it. Cassie Cao, you got the hot girl, right? You were chosen to be one of JFL's new faces of comedy a few years back. How much of a blow is this for people who might be counting on this year's festival?
I think the New Faces is the most exciting event at JFL. I think JFL itself is already the biggest festival in the world. It's so big for us to have it in Canada, given that we have so little else of the industry.
Yeah.
But New Faces itself is what everyone is excited about. It's what all the industry and agents and producers and casting directors and talent scouts, it's what everyone's looking for, are the new faces of comedy.
Yeah.
And I was so lucky to get it. And it's a big hubbub. You get a lot of press. People think you're, you know what I mean? It really boosts your profile for a minute, but also you have to prepare for it for so long. And I think having that taken away, given that there's really so much, there's really nothing else in this country that even compares to being able to give you that same kind of profile, is a huge loss for Canadians, because American comics who get to do New Faces have tons of other stuff in America that they can do, but there's really nothing of this size in Canada for us.
I want to hold on that for a moment. The idea that there's nothing really compares to the size of what JFL can do for you, because I really like the way that Hisham Kaladi put it in the Toronto Star. He said people maybe think that comedians just have a set and they go up and they do it for JFL. But when you get a spot like New Faces, it's kind of like the Olympics. You spend time preparing for this thing. You spend months and months planning for the set, planning to get ready for that moment. And so when this moment it gets taken away from you, it feels like a significant blow. Is that an accurate description?
I think so. I think when I think of it disrupting the industry, yes, we're going to have a weird thing that's not happening in July, but I actually think of it mostly like most comics take at least 6 months a year to prep for their showcases. Everyone's going around writing new material, and especially like depending on your style, not every style is super conducive to JFL. So often if you're like too dirty or too political or whatever, you will adjust your set so that you can showcase for JFL and put your best foot forward. You like spend months gossiping about like what the bookers are looking for and everything. And then showcases actually take place like over 3 months a year. I think they've already started, which is why it's such a wild thing that they canceled the festival. But in Canada, 200 comics have already showcased for the festival. And that's like what you almost build your year around, right? Like in Canada, we build our year around our showcase sets. That's what like the season is for us.
The idea that you spend so much time sort of planning your time around this very specific set and then it kind of gets taken away with like not that much notice. I have to imagine that a lot of people are shocked, but also really disappointed. Ali, we got to talk about why this is a big deal, kind of beyond JFL's own internal struggles. Because nowadays people are consuming comedy on their phones, right? Like I watch a lot of TikTok comedians, and to me they're famous, and I, show them to my friends and they go like, I've never heard of this person before. But it kind of creates a kind of like this insular consumption of comedy. But then there's also the Netflix specials, meaning that you might be less inclined to spend money on tickets at a festival. And then there's also this idea that like big comedians can actually sell out arenas on their own. They don't really need a comedy festival to anchor them. What do you think about these two different paths?
Well, touching on something you just said, I had this insider information about Just for Laughs for a number of years, and I'm happy I did.
Okay.
Which was that, Just for Laughs would, and I'm just going to use Kevin Hart's name because that's one of these type of guys. He represents all these big names, and Just for Laughs would always go for a big name and say like, hey, we want you at the festival this year. And then their managers or agents, being the savvy sharks they are, would be like, great, Kevin will come to the festival, and so will these 9 performers.
I'm sorry,
right?
what?
So now you have Kevin Hart plus 9. It's a big guest list. They're all comedians. And the agents are like, hey, comedians, guess what? We're all going to Montreal this year. But what happened in that world was that the spots reserved for Canadians, because our the talent bookers would go about, as Cassie said, 200 people have already showcased. These people stood a chance to perform it Just for Laughs. And then Americans would sort of come in and take those spots, and there's a finite number of spots every year. So that was always a bit of an issue for Just for Laughs. And I think that in part motivated a lot of comedians, certainly Canadian comedians, to be like, I'm going to do this on my own. I have the means, I have the desire, and I'm going to create my own path. And a lot of them have. And so you get into this interesting world where now if Just for Laughs approaches some of these comedians and says, hey, we have, $1,000 for you to do this. Yeah. Some of these comedians can be like, I don't need your $1,000. I can make 8,000 in a weekend here or here because of my own fan base. So it's a very, very tricky situation that we find ourselves in. And also I think you have this, I don't think comedy is going away just because you can see it on Netflix. Yeah. But I do think you have this young, new audience to comedy that doesn't know much about comedy. I have a story from New York. One of my friends was standing with a doorman in a club, and this couple gets up and says to her and the doorman, that comedian, they point at the stage, they get up from the show, they point at the stage, go, that comedian is doing Matt Rife's material. And so they look over and the comedian was doing so where are you guys from? Where are you all from? What do you guys do for a living? What's your name? They knew so little about comedy that they said, we are going to, but they knew how to be indignant, but they didn't know a thing about comedy. And they were like, well, that guy's doing so this is like
any crowd work is now Matt Rife territory. That's
exactly. Yikes. And it was like a really sad story, but it's more a story about how little some people know about this industry.
Really? I mean, the real crime is that they called Matt Rife a comedian.
All right. I mean, okay, first of all, a lot of things that I want to pick up on there from everything that Ali just said, Cassie, like the idea that, if you're bringing in Kevin Hart would say, I'm not just bringing one opener with me. Here's 9 of my crew. That's a wild thing to hear. But what's your take on everything that Ali was just saying?
I mean, I think, I mean, I agree with what he said.
Yeah.
I personally don't think there's people who say that because you can access stand-up on your phone, on Netflix, on streaming, that people are less willing to go out to see the shows. And I just think that if you are a live performer, like, you just know that that is not true. It is the inverse. The more you see it on your phone, the more you see it on Netflix, the more you're like, it looks really fun to be there and I'm not getting the same energy. So that should be boosting ticket sales all across stand-up. Like, the industry is literally bigger than it has ever been before. So if there is a problem drawing at JFL, I would posit that it is probably a problem of quality of acts. And if you can't draw quality acts, if you're not treating comedians well, if you're not giving them a good reason to do your festival, if it is more worth it. I will also say for myself, I don't know that this is true across all comedians, but like, I would say most comedians hate self-producing the most. So if you are not offering a good enough deal to comics that they would rather go deal with the hassle of self-producing their own shows, like, you got to give them something.
I like this idea, first of all, that Cassie's like, my room's full. I'm having no trouble with this. Y'all stay safe out there. But Ali, maybe more importantly, like, why wasn't JFL a better place for Canadian comedians, do you think? Why are Canadian comedians sort of trying to go these other paths?
I mean, if I knew the answer to that, Elamin.
Yeah, you'd be a promoter.
Be on a pedestal. No, I don't know. Look, it's actually, it's a frustrating subject because having grown up in Montreal and in Quebec and being very familiar with the star system, this is a term maybe most of your listeners don't even aren't
Want
even
to explain the star
with.
system? Yeah.
In Quebec, with French comedians, the star system is in place, as it is in the US. But what it is you see somebody who has some potential and you nurture them. You support them, you encourage them, and you say, we are going to get you, young performer, out into the market, and we're going to make sure we get as many eyes on you as possible because you are a talent. And so you have this world where from the minute they're on stage, these performers, I mean, at open mics, which we don't get paid for open mics. We go and do an open mic because it's our gym, we're working it out. We don't care if we get paid or not, or so we've been told that we shouldn't pay. But then you find out that open micers in Quebec get anywhere between $50 and $100, maybe sometimes more, to do open mics. And wait a minute, you're paying rent off your open mics? What's happening here? Rent is much cheaper in Montreal, of course, but it's still like wild that that's an option. And it starts at the ground level and goes up from there. And it just, you support talent and you encourage it. And that's just not the formula in Canada. And my hope is, I would love to see Just for Laughs again. As I say, it has a dear place in my heart. My hope is maybe this is, I'm speaking into God's ear directly here. I mean, this is almost a dream, but
Speak
my
it
hope
out.
is maybe Just for Laughs could to do something where we say, okay, maybe this is a star, because New Faces was that, Cassie. I feel like, maybe I'm wrong, but I felt like New Faces was that, promoting new talent, and otherwise it was kind of forgotten. But from a payment perspective, it wasn't ever impressive. Nobody ever told you, no Canadian comedian ever told you how much you were making, and you went, "Ooh, congrats, amazing."
Well, I was going to say
tens of dollars a year.
Well, Cassie, all right, Cassie, you're now the president of comedy in Canada. You get to design your own ecosystem. What are the things? Yeah, congratulations. What are the things that you'd be bringing? What would you change? Where would you start?
I want to piggyback off of what Ali was saying, because I think that's so crucial that I don't know that a lot of people as audiences know about, which is that the whole business model of JFL has been to book these really big American and international talent acts to headline their galas. And then they fill some of their shows with Canadians when it makes sense. And it's so frustrating for us because, as I say, it is the biggest festival in the world and it is our home festival, and they just won't prioritize developing local talent. And the thing is you don't see that in any of the other major international festivals. Melbourne won't let has a certain quota for international talent because they want to make sure all of their local talent is being put foremost. all of the American festivals obviously are promoting American talent. A lot of Canadians can barely even get on there, whereas ours is the biggest one and is the only one that won't center Canadian talent. Oof. And I think that if that has to do, like, there's also a lot of talk about saying like JFL is starting to not become as relevant because there's so many other bigger and more interesting, and like Netflix
has a festival coming now. That's right. Yeah,
that's going down in the States, and that's drawing American talent away, and that's what was drawing audiences up to JFL was also the American talent.
Right.
But I just think that that's such a short-sighted way to do that business. I think that I hope if JFL comes back, when it comes back, that it starts to center Canadian talent, that it puts an emphasis on creating and maintaining a Canadian sensibility. We do have different humor. We have different political ideals and values. We have a cultural identity. We have like a wonderful, diversity mosaic? Is that what they're teaching the kids? Like we have such a rich cultural identity that is distinct. And I do think that the value of stand-up comedy, I'm getting so impassioned about this, but like I think the value of stand-up comedy is that it is tailored to the exact audience that you are doing. When I do a show, I don't do the same set ever, because the set will always change depending on who I'm talking to. Yeah. And the thing is, when you want to go see shows live, the whole point of it is that you are geographically close to the show, that you can all gather in the same place and you can share a moment just with you and that audience. And people who go out to local shows want to see local comedy tailored to that. They don't want to know what Matt Rife is doing down in LA. They want to know what's going on like Rue Sainte-Catherine or whatever, you know, like they want to know what's happening near them. They want to know what's funny in their house.
Yeah.
And so if JFL comes back, I really hope that they have the foresight to realize like that American talent is very ephemeral and they go anywhere. And so they should develop our talent.
Just in case people are yelling in their cars in agreement with you, we should also tell people that Ali Hassan, who has a Zoom camera on, just put up balloons on the screen in agreement with this. We have to leave it there, but I really appreciate the passion and the thoughtfulness that you guys brought to this. Ali Hassan, Cassie Cao, thank you so much for talking your talk, for just going completely off. This was great. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
We're going to go break stuff now, Cassie.
Do it. Go for it. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Cassie Cao is a comedian and TV writer. Ali Hassan hosts CBC Radio's Laugh Out Loud, which you can get wherever you get your podcasts. His memoir, Is There Bacon in Heaven?, is out everywhere now. My name is Elamin Abdul-Mahmoud, and this is Commotion. First, let me just say, there's no place in Canada to stream the new documentary about popular talk show host Wendy Williams. But if you're online, it's kind of been hard to avoid all the feelings that people are having about this documentary. 2 days before the series dropped, producers revealed that the iconic media personality had been diagnosed with aphasia and dementia, and that they didn't know about her condition when they were filming. But they still went ahead and decided to show Wendy at her most vulnerable.
I have no idea where we are. This doesn't look like anything familiar.
I think she's losing memory. Have you guys noticed that?
How dare him?
Anybody could look at her and tell this is not just alcohol. There's something more going on.
Our friend Tayo Bero wrote about her feelings about the series in The Guardian recently. Tayo, welcome back to Commotion, friend.
Hi, Elamin.
Hi, I'm glad that you're here. Look, I'm uncomfortable with the fact that we even just played that clip because this documentary has been so colored by the fact by these revelations. We'll get to those in just a moment. But for anyone who doesn't know Wendy Williams, why is she such an icon?
Wendy Williams was an icon, I think, because when she came out the game, she was this 5'10", powerful Black woman who was like bold and brash and unapologetically good at what she did. Like that was I think that's the key piece. Like she is a fantastic interviewer, fantastic talk show host.
Yeah.
And of course, gossip radio and daytime TV has been around forever, right? She didn't invent this, but I think she brought something to the landscape whenever she was in front of a mic that really just shifted, I think, how we talk to celebrities, but also how we participate in pop culture.
So that's the Wendy Williams that we know and love. And then you watch this documentary. How does she come across in this documentary?
So it was really quite sad to see. Like you heard in the clip that you played on the top there, she barely knew where she was half the time. If you do get a chance to watch it, half the time she's confused, she was asleep, like losing her words, which we now know was as a result of the aphasia. And also, of course, she's talked about her struggles with alcohol abuse. Like she's been very open about this in the past. And you'll see how that gets portrayed in the documentary. And then I think this was kind of one of the more salacious bits that we've been seeing throughout social media is she comes across very mean and confrontational, which we now know and which hopefully people will learn like is one of the symptoms of the type of dementia that she's dealing with. So that's the version of Wendy that you see when you watch this series.
Yeah, so these are the clips that I've seen of the documentary. They're clips of her sort of lashing out at assistants. And I think when they sort of started going viral, they were sort of played for a laugh. I was like, oh, that's Wendy sort of holding this boundary. But you kind of watch it and go, look, there's something more going on here. You know, this is beyond the Wendy that I sort of know and recognize from the television that I've seen. She's described as an executive producer on this project. This raises all kinds of questions about informed consent and whether she'd really want the world to see her like this. What do you think? Would she want us to watch this thing, do you think?
Absolutely not. Like, listen, Wendy Williams is as messy as they come. And this is not like, we're not trying to sanitize her image. She's had a pretty messy history, both as a host and in her own personal life. And she's been open about it, right? But also, like, if you watch the Wendy Williams show, if you watch any of the old episodes, like, she's bringing you backstage, but not until she has her good wig on, right? And she's bringing you into all of these moments in her personal life. But she was also a person who was very image conscious and very intentional about what she let us know and how the ways that she let us into her life and the moments that she let us into. So I don't think there's any version of that Wendy that we know that would be happy to watch this and see the way that she's been portrayed here.
In your piece, you write that, I'm going to quote you here, Hollywood has always had a fiendish appetite for the suffering of others. There's clearly an audience for it. So is it on us? Is it on us in these moments to say, you know what? I'm not going to watch this. I'm uncomfortable with the version of Wendy Williams that is in this documentary, and they should have never taped it in the first place. Is this sort of placed on us as a responsibility, do you think?
I think so. And I think like it's also easy to say, right? Like it's a complicated question. And I think it's one that audiences and even people who write and critique the culture like myself are really grappling with, because it's a bit of a chicken and egg situation where it's like, if there wasn't an audience for this type of drama and for a docuseries like this, then one wouldn't have gotten made to begin with, right? But I think the important question that we need to ask, and that I think that I tried to ask in the piece and interrogate, is like, who is this for, right? When we make art or when we create any kind of conversation in the culture, who does it benefit, who does it harm, and who is it for ultimately? And I think that kind of being the litmus test is an important thing for us as audiences to start thinking about if we want to consume more responsibly.
Well, I guess that's what I worry about, Tayo, is that we don't have a very good track record when it comes to taking on that responsibility, right? Like the idea that once a piece of media gets made, we kind of go like, well, we'll engage with it. Well, we'll watch it. Whereas this one genuinely to me kind of feels like this crosses a line that I'm not really even willing to go across,
Yeah, no. And if it had to be like a yes or no decision, I would not advise people to see this documentary. It's also like for all the reasons that we've talked about, but also it's extremely triggering too. If you have family or you have any experience with any of these kinds of cognitive issues, and you really see her cognitive decline show up in this, and if you've had any experience with that, then, this is a really tough watch.
Tayo, I appreciate you writing about this. I appreciate your guiding words. Thank you so much for your time, friend. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Tayo Bero is a freelance writer with a column in The Guardian. She's in Lagos, Nigeria. And listen, that is it for the podcast today. Remember, you can listen to the show anytime you like, wherever you get your podcasts. If you've got a moment, find us on Instagram. We are at Commotion CBC. My name is Elamin Abdul Mahmoud. We are going to be back tomorrow, and I would love to see you then.